Hey guys, Jared Gaspy, your local real estate superhero here. I wanted to do something a little different today. I wanted to do something that's a little bit more formal. So what I went ahead and did is I asked a handful of people to give me just a handful of questions back about what they would ask a real estate agent if they had something come to them just off the top of their head. And so I want to go through those questions with you, and hopefully anyone who's watching this video, if you had a similar question or just would have thought of a similar question off the top of your head, that's one of the questions that was asked to me. Hopefully this helps. So let's get to it. Question number 1 from Desiree. What are the requirements necessary for buying a home, and what would be considered a good down payment, and how would you calculate the minimum down payment? Now, this is a really good question, mainly because a lot of people don't realize how feasible it is for them to be able to buy a home. And so I wanted to tackle this question almost primarily in order to reference those people. It's way more realistic and in the realm of possibility to be able to purchase a home than people ever give it credit for. That's not to say that it's easy, it's just to say that you should definitely look into it before you discount it entirely. So let's go over some of the things that you would need in order to be able to buy a home. As far as making sure that you qualify for a home, your best bet is to talk to your lender. But in order to go over some of the basics on the things that the lender would ask you, let's go ahead and go over that too. The first thing that we want to make sure we have under control is our credit score. I know that to qualify for a zero down program in order to buy a home that's $0 on your down payment, you want to make sure you have a credit score of at least 640. Anything above that and you qualify. There are even some programs that are out there to help if you have a lower credit score. So ultimately, talking to your lender and an aspect of that really helps, but if you have anything around 640 or above, you're doing pretty well. The second thing that you want to make sure you have under control is you want to make sure that you've been working in the same industry for 2 years. Now, a lot of people get that confused thinking that they need to have the same job for the last 2 years, and that's not entirely accurate. A good example is if you're a nurse, you can go from working at one hospital to working at another, and as long as it's in the same industry, you're still good. Another one would be if you have one job that you do and then you get a promotion, it doesn't hurt or hinder your ability to buy a home. In fact, it helps because now you have a bigger income. Having a change in title doesn't matter as long as you don't have a change in industry. So those two things are really important to have. I know that there are other qualifications depending on what type of program you have that you're trying to qualify for, but if you have your credit under control and you have good job experience for the last 2 years, those are the two most important things. Having a solid down payment is something that you can negotiate with. There are different programs for lower down payments or even no down payments. And then ultimately, if you wanted to play it safe, having your down payment under control, just make sure that you have 20%, and then you're usually well set in order to get a loan as long as you also have the other two requirements met. So make sure you got your credit under control and you have the work history to boot. Beyond that, talk to your lender or talk to your agent and they'll get you a hold of one and they'll go over with you all the little details that you need to do in order to finalize getting your pre-qualification and your pre-approval. But that's it. And then after that, like I said, the down payment, I know we talked about how low we can go, and that's just sort of up to the program itself. So talk to your lender, see what they've got, but there are even things as low as $0 down in order to buy a home. So always look into what your options are. I have a coworker right now who just helped a family buy a home and they looked into renting, but instead of renting, they bought their house for $380 out of pocket. And they're in escrow right now. So you don't know what you're capable of unless you go find out. So go find out. Question number 2 comes with a preface first, and it comes from Cameron. In all honesty, I don't know a ton about real estate, so I want to start off with the basics. What's the difference between having a real estate agent and doing it myself? And where do I start when it comes to buying a home? I really like this question because honestly speaking, not a lot of people necessarily do have a good idea on what to ask whenever they go and talk to a real estate agent. And the biggest thing is a lot of people don't even know where to start. So I'm going to want to tackle this with the first part first, then I'll kind of go over the second. But ultimately, why does someone need a real estate agent in order to help them out? So let's start from the buyer's perspective. If you're a buyer wanting to look at properties, having an agent there that's able to negotiate on your behalf is almost necessary in order for you to make sure that you get the best deal possible. If you have a lot of money to just throw at something, then sure, you might be okay. But ultimately, if you're not exposed in a real estate environment, you don't know how the market works, you don't know necessarily whether or not what you're buying is a good deal. And so having someone who's able to go out there and knows the environment that you're wanting to look in, knows what the market's like in that neighborhood, the sales price in that neighborhood, and is able to tell you, hey, this is a good deal or this is a bad deal, has a list of vendors that they go through in order to say, hey, we're going to do the inspection, and if we see this problem, then maybe we can do a request for repairs in order to get that fixed, or if we see this problem, honestly speaking, this may not be worth it for you. And so having someone who's able to give you that level of opinion because they have that level of exposure, it's important to have from a buyer's perspective. Plus, the biggest thing that people don't seem to realize from a buyer's perspective when they first buy a home is you don't pay the agent. The agents on both sides, both the buyer and the seller's agent, both get paid from the seller's side, not from the buyer's. And so if you're wanting to look out and you want to go and buy a home, you're going to have an agent with you if you choose to, who's going to be able to negotiate on your behalf, knows what to look for, and for the things that they don't know, they'll have a list of people in order to figure that out for you too. They're not going to know everything. I know I don't know everything, but one thing that I can say to everyone that I talk to is in the event that I don't know something, I know how to find out, and I know who to find who does. And so find someone like that for you, or find me if you're by me. And ultimately we'll get this figured out together. But that's what you want from a buyer's perspective. Plus, and this is sort of a given a little bit, but if you have a buyer's agent and they're able to represent you as the buyer, they're going to have the ability to talk to a bunch of other agents and get you the ability to look at the homes way faster. So it's just smooth sailing for you if that's what you choose to do. So it's almost a no-brainer, it's no money out of your pocket, and you get advice and consultation you wouldn't get otherwise. So I would just take advantage of it. So now we get into the seller side, and that does get a little bit trickier because there are things like for sale by owners who are a group of people that consciously decide that they don't want to use an agent in order to help represent them. And honestly speaking, to the people who choose to sell their homes by themselves, I actually want to go out of my way to say more power to you. I know that it's hard, and I know that it's not something that a lot of people have the ability to do. If you think that you have the ability to even attempt it, then you deserve a lot of respect for that alone. That being said, I will go so far as to say that it's not for everyone, and that a lot of times when people think that they can sell their home by themselves, it doesn't always work out the way that they want it to. On average, people who sell their homes by themselves tend to be on the market for longer, and they tend to make less by the end of the sale than statistically they would have if they had an agent. Plus, beyond that, I think the national statistic, not my statistic or my opinion, but the national statistic says something upwards of 90% of people who try to sell their homes by themselves tend to list with an agent within 60 days of putting their own home on the market. And the reason for it can vary, ultimately. People who work in the real estate world have the ability to negotiate, like I said before. We're exposed in this environment, so we know not only how to negotiate on your behalf, but we also know how to market your property in a way that's different from if I was trying to sell Girl Scout cookies or sell car insurance. It's not the same. And so knowing what you're trying to sell and what you're trying to market for and promote, it's important to have in an environment like that. And so having an agent might help you for that. I know that having an agent from a seller's perspective takes away a lot of the legalities that would be just completely on you and takes them on the shoulders of the agent, which is a really big deal for a lot of people whenever they're just wanting to sell their home in order to avoid any kind of hassle of finding an agent. But then in turn, they have more of a hassle of all the legalities that are now completely on them. Beyond that, the biggest problem with people who want to do it by themselves is usually they want to avoid the commission, and for that, all I'd say is go back to the statistic that says that people who sell their homes by themselves tend to get less when they sell the property, and they tend to be on the market for longer. If you're one of the people that can sell your home by yourself, you deserve all of the respect in the world. If you are that 10% that doesn't even list with an agent by the end of it, you deserve more respect on top of that. But take some time to really think about what you want to do and why you're wanting to sell your home. Because if you want to sell it quickly, and if you want to sell it competitively for as much money as you can get, more people tend to net more money with an agent than if they try to do it by themselves. So it's just math. Question number 3 comes from Trayvon. How can you tell when it's the best time to buy a house? And what's the hardest part about finding a house that you wouldn't expect? So I'm going to kind of tackle this more in the latter part of your question and sort of just breeze by the first part. You ask when's the best time for you to be able to buy a house, talk to an agent and talk to a lender. It might be more realistic for you to do it right now than you ever thought it was to begin with, and the only way to find out is to find out. As far as what's the hardest part of buying a home, I would say it's finding the right home. And that sounds almost jokingly whenever I say it, but it's true. A lot of people will compromise whenever they go out looking for a house to rent, and you should to a certain degree because it's not your house. So you might not like the size of the backyard, you might not like the way the cabinetry is designed, you may not like the way that the house is laid out, but ultimately, if it's got enough space for you and your entire family and it's affordable, a lot of people tend to find ways to compromise, and you should. Like I said, it's not yours. But when it is, then that means that it's one of the biggest investments you're ever going to make in your life, and you have a right to be picky. So be picky. If you see something about the home that you don't like, that you can't fix, then let's move on to the next one. And ultimately, if it's something that you can kind of negotiate with or compromise on, let's say, you get the home for $20,000 less than what you thought you'd be spending, but you don't really like the fact that there's carpet, let's put in some hardwood or some laminate or something like that. Like, there's room for compromise, but there's also plenty of room to be picky. So find the home that fits you, and if that takes longer, then it takes longer, because this is one of the biggest investments you're ever going to make, and so it deserves time and attention. So take your time. All right, last question comes from Jade. What all details does a realtor have to tell about a property when looking? Good example, like if someone were to die in a house, would you guys have to say something? So I wanted to end it on this question because it's a very genuinely good question, and it's something that not a lot of people think about until after the fact. And it's basically that thing that goes on in the back of your head after you buy a home, which is, did the agent really tell me everything that they were supposed to? Is there something that maybe I'd want to know about that maybe the agent didn't relay over to me? My best advice that I can give in a situation like that is just basically make sure you have an agent that you trust. I know, going back to the question you asked and the specifics on it, on whether or not someone passes away in the home, is that something that needs to be told to the buyer? Yes, but there are gray areas in that. There's time frames that need to be abided by. I think in California it's about 3 years that you legally have to tell your clients and disclose to them that someone passed away in the property. Notice though that I say I think. And I'm 99% certain that it's 3 years, but I always like to say I think because I'd rather go by the mentality of, if I question whether or not I should disclose something to my clients, I'm just going to disclose it. There are some gray areas there. A good example is if someone passes away from AIDS, you're not allowed to legally disclose how they passed away, but you still need to tell someone that they did. And so it's important going into a situation where you're putting down your biggest investment in life that you have someone that you genuinely trust and who genuinely has your best interests at heart in every action they make on your behalf. And so make sure you find someone like that to represent you, because you want someone who's not going to try to tell you something because they're worried that you're going to find out. They're going to tell you because they're worried that it might be something you want to know at all. So find someone like that. And if you have any questions, always feel free to ask. And if you don't feel like you're comfortable asking, then you need to ask yourself whether or not you found the right agent. Find someone you can trust, and find someone who you know is going to have your best interests at heart. That's our fiduciary duty to you. So find someone who's going to do that for you. So that's it. That's the end of the video. I want to thank everyone who gave questions. For the people that asked questions that I didn't have a chance to answer, I don't want you to think that I'm ignoring you. It's just I had a lot of people. I didn't expect so many to actually answer my response for questions. And so I'm really happy that you guys did. If I didn't get to your question, just know that it's not because I don't care about you or because you asked a question that I didn't like. It's just I didn't have time to be able to get to it. So maybe I'll be able to get to it later. If you guys have any other questions, always feel free to either give me a call or leave a comment down below, and I'll always be happy in order to help you out. And thank you guys so much for watching. It means a lot. I liked doing something that's a little bit more formal like this, so I hope to be able to do stuff like this more in the future. But it's not to say that I'm not going to have my weird stuff where it's me in the middle of a car just telling you guys about random stuff going on, or me walking around the neighborhood. I have something that's really fun that's going to be coming out. I don't know if it's going to come out before or after this, but let's just say I have a hunch I'm not going to enjoy it as much after the fact as I do before. So stay tuned for that, or laugh after the fact knowing that I'm right and that I didn't really enjoy it. So stay tuned for some of the stuff I'm going to post. I had a lot of fun doing this. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, everyone. Bye.